Toru Oikawa is the greatest character in Haikyuu. I have been a fan of Haikyuu for such a long time. There are so many amazing characters in the series, from Hinata to Kageyama, Suki, Asahi, Tanaka, Daichi, the list goes on and on. But the character that has stood out the most to me is Oikawa. And spoiler warning, I will be talking about the entire manga, so if you haven't read it all, click away now. When Oikawa was introduced, I never really thought too much of him. I actually didn't have really strong feelings for him until later on in the series. But as we go through the story, I think there's a big misconception about Oikawa. Everyone thinks he's kind of like an underdog, surrounded by monsters and geniuses. But Oikawa in his own right is a genius. Like, he was one of the best setters in his middle school and dominated matches up until he met Shijima, who was a genius on a higher level than Oikawa. And then during Oikawa's middle school years, Kageyama came at the tail end and blew everyone away with his setting ability and his immense talent. And all this pressure that Oikawa was dealing with led to one of the most generational crash outs I've ever seen. An elementary school kid was threatening Oikawa so much that he was about to catch a fade with this young Kageyama. Thankfully, Oikawa had an amazing teammate, Iwazama, who stopped Oikawa and knocked some sense into him. And he taught Oikawa a very valuable lesson. That it's not just him that is taking on all these geniuses, and he doesn't have to shoulder the burden of the entire team. It is the entire team working together that will beat these higher level players. I know it's a very corny and overused trope that friendship and teamwork will win at the end of the day, but I think it's still a very important lesson for Oikawa to learn as he shouldered the burden of carrying his team to nationals, and when he realized that he wasn't as good as these other players, he started panicking and losing his sense of identity. But when you don't have the gifts of those around you, you have to rely on those who support you, and that is your team. And this lesson was vitally important to Oikawa's character development, and it translated to massive improvement on the court, where other people started recognizing him as one of the juggernauts of the sport. And this lesson culminated in my favorite scene of the entire series of Haikyuu, and that is the spring qualifier semifinals where Obajosai went up against Karasuno for the last time of the series. And during the last rally of this insane game, where Karasuno only needed to score one more point to win, Oikawa really showed his grit and tenacity that made me fall instantly in love with this character. I have watched this scene more times than I care to admit, and I still think about it 8 years later. It is jaw-dropping. So this final rally is intense. Both teams aren't giving an inch, and just when it seems like Karasuno is about to win, you just see Oikawa running after the ball out of bounds, and at this point everyone's screaming chance ball, so I just think at best that Oikawa is just going to lob it over the net, give Karasuno another chance to attack. But then we see Oikawa pull out the All Might pose, and then I just immediately sit up in my chair. I'm like, what's this dude cooking? And out of nowhere, he just does an incredible half-court set to Iwazuma. This is kind of where I fell in love with volleyball. I first didn't know volleyball could be this intense, and second, I did not know that players put their bodies on the line for these points. And then you just see Oikawa crash into a table. Heads were rolling when I saw this scene. Like, when I saw him crash into that table, felt like I became a man that day. I did not know that players put their bodies on the line for volleyball and it could be this intense. I had no idea. And to show the tenacity that Oikawa had to win and not give Karasuno another chance to attack demanded nothing but my respect and admiration for this character. And Oikawa's character arc culminates with this amazing final rally. As he is getting up from the table and trying to stand, he drops one of my favorite quotes I've ever seen in anime. Talent is something you make bloom, instinct is something you polish. And this one phrase summarizes all of Oikawa's character. He stopped growing, so he had to make his talent bloom on its own, and with all of his experience, he forged his instincts. And he almost won the game by predicting Hinata's quick, and he would have been able to receive it if it wasn't for the ball bouncing off of his teammate's hand. But unfortunately, Obajosai lost to Karasuno, and the match was over, and so was their dream of going to nationals in high school. I really liked how Oikawa responded to this loss. Before, he would have been devastated and lash out about his loss. But when his teammate Iwazuma was trying to bear the burden of the loss for the whole team, Oikawa gave him the biggest slap on the back, seemingly bringing Iwazuma back to his senses. And I think this is a perfect full circle moment for Oikawa, because when he was overwhelmed overwhelmed by Kageyama, it was Iwazuma who brought him back to his senses. And now, when Iwazuma was in need, it was Oikawa to return the favor, and to remind Iwazuma to not shoulder the burden alone. And Oikawa's ideology was tested even further when he had his conversation with Ushijima after their match. Ushijima told Oikawa that if he chose Shiratoshi, he would have been playing in the finals and they would have made it to national, and that Oikawa made a mistake by choosing his friends as opposed to a stronger school. And Oikawa really bared his fangs against Ushijima, which further exemplifies Oikawa's growth since middle school. He told Ushijima to never forget his worthless pride, and that he made no mistakes in his volleyball career by choosing to play with Oba Jousai. And after that speech, we barely see Oikawa again in the series until, spoiler alert for those who haven't read the manga, the time skip where Hinata goes to Brazil to train while Kageyama is going into the professional league. So this arc of Haikyuu is something I really like a lot, and to see that Hinata flew to a different country to play beach volleyball and get better was honestly super cool. And to see that Oikawa was on that same wavelength was honestly really cool. When Oikawa popped up into the story again, I was actually very shocked, and to see that he played in the Argentinian league was perfect for Oikawa's journey. Especially after his speech to Ushijima about not forgetting his worthless pride, I always knew that Oikawa would not let his volleyball journey end there. But I never would have expected to see him in Brazil. And then we get an Oikawa flashback to after high school, where he's deciding whether he wants to keep playing volleyball or not. He meets with an Argentinian player named Jose Blanco, who he has been a fan of since he was a kid. And Jose Blanco gives Oikawa some amazing advice. Jose said that if you're going to complain that someone born with more talent than you is and always will be better than you no matter how hard you work, no matter how many tricks you learn, and no matter how many great teammates you have, only do that after giving everything the best you can. And Oikawa really took this to heart and followed him all the way to Argentina to play and learn from him. And while his team was in Brazil for a week, he partnered with Hinata for beach volleyball and actually played on the same team as him. And during the time they played together, both Hinata and Oikawa both felt like beginners playing sand volleyball, but it gave them an appreciation for why they both loved the sport so much. When it was time for Oikawa to leave back to Argentina, he told Hinata that he was going to beat everybody and that they should be ready. And Oikawa stuck to his word, because at the end of the series, they have another time skip to the Olympics, and just as Japan is heading into its next game, you see Oikawa and the Argentinian team has appeared as their next opponents. And you see that Ushijima and Kageyama are thinking about the last things that Oikawa said before he went overseas and left Japan. And now Oikawa is at the biggest stage for volleyball, challenging both of these amazing players and keeping his promise that he was going to beat everybody. And I can't help but love this character. Oikawa is one of the most petty characters I've ever seen in anime, and I am so here for it. This man held onto a grudge in high school and carried it for 10 years to finally get revenge on the players that looked down on him all those years ago. Like, that is incredible, and it makes me love Oikawa even more. And the fact that he got to the Olympics all by himself, going to a different country and rising through the ranks to become one of the all-stars for that country's Olympic team, is nothing short of amazing. And after all of that, how could Oikawa and his worthless pride not be the greatest character in Haikyuu? Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys later. Peace.